Hi, I'm Paco Romane.
I'm George Chen, and you're listening to SUP Doc, a show where we discuss documentaries with our guests from the worlds of comedy, film, TV, and more.
We're talking music docs all month long in our Rocktober series. On today's episode, we sat down with legendary comedian Dana Gould.
Dana was head writer for many years on The Simpsons. He created the show Stand Against Evil, and he just released his newest comedy album, Mr. Funnyman, on Kill Rock Stars.
Season 2 of Stand Against Evil premieres on November 1st on IFC.
Dana wanted to discuss the revealing 2004 documentary, Metallica, Some Kind of Monster. Filmmakers Bruce Sinofsky and Joe Berlinger, the duo that made Paradise Lost series about the West Memphis 3, follow members of Metallica as one member quits and another goes to rehab.
The Metal Titans hire a therapist and grapple with 20 years of repressed anger and aggression and force themselves to rebuild their band. Or, as Dana puts it, it's really a film about marriage.
And now, here's Dana Gould.
Today, our guest is Dana Gould, one of my favorite comedians. Thanks so much, Dana, for coming. Really appreciate it. You being on SUP Doc.
Thanking you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you having me on.
You're
As I like
one
to
of my
say, the
favorites
man,
too.
The myth, the Otto.
I was gonna say, you're one of my favorites too. So
Oh, thanks.
it's like we're fanning out.
We are
that'll-
fanning out.
The great thing about that is by the end of this, I will no longer be.
Well, how big of a Metallica fan are you?
Not at all, originally.
That's what I was wondering, because
Yeah.
I knew you're like, I thought maybe you would want to do like the Brian Wilson documentary or something.
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
that's more to my liking. But, that was what was great about this documentary is I went to see it. It just sounded interesting. I liked the idea of I knew the rough story was a band gets a therapist. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'll go see that. And I knew Metallica, but I didn't own any Metallica, and I still don't. But what was amazing is it's not about Metallica. Some Kind of Monster, to me, is the best documentary ever made about marriage.
Okay.
It really is. You're in a relationship with someone, and you reach a point where that relationship has become untenable.
Right.
But because of external circumstances, whether it's a giant business or a family and children, you have to work through this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a choice.
Right.
And that's really what it's about at its heart. It's about, and like in many a marriage, certainly in terms of mine, when a third party comes in to help you navigate that problem, they often become the source of a newer problem. and
Did you get the feeling?
And in dealing with that problem, you unite with your original partner.
Right. Yeah, I totally recognize that dynamic in
Yeah.
there. And like to me, I've never been married, but yeah, family. I've been in bands, so
Yeah.
like the idea of like I see the patterns of a family, and also like in the music scene, a lot of people come out of dysfunctional.
Yeah, totally.
backgrounds,
Of course,
so-
you don't become, it's musicians like comedians. I always say, like, no one has ever said, well, now that I got my shit together emotionally, I'm going to go into bars and beg strangers to love me.
As I was watching this documentary, I kept thinking, man, they all just need a therapist. And then the therapist would pop up, and
Yeah.
be like, oh, that's right, he's involved.
Yeah. And then you're like, not this therapist.
Yeah.
But that's also kind of similar. I was thinking a lot about Brian Wilson and Dr. Eugene watching this, and I can't find Just Wasn't Made for These Times. Like, it's hard to find.
Oh, I have it. I wish you'd ask.
own
Yeah,
it?
I have it. Yeah.
But it's very hard to find. It's out of print. But I did watch Love and Mercy recently, which like gets into a lot of those
Tells the
dynamics
story,
as
yeah.
well. Yeah, from a fiction viewpoint.
Yeah, my friend Andy Paley, who actually produced the album that Brian is recording at the end of that movie, Love and Mercy.
Right, yeah.
In the movie, it looks like Melinda's producing it, but it's actually someone else. My friend Andy Paley is producing it, and he has answering machine cassette tapes of Brian calling him in the late 70s, early 80s.
Wow.
And you can hear Landy picking up the extension and listening in.
Whoa.
And it's a lot of late 70s jargon, like,
Yeah.
hey, did you lay out today? We're going to lay out.
What is that? What is
Laying out in the sun. Did you lay out?
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was an expression. What'd you do? I laid out.
Very randomly, I know my friend Richard is the son of Van Dyke Parks.
There you go.
And I asked him, has your dad seen this movie? Because there's a
Yeah.
guy playing Van Dyke
Right.
in the movie. And he's like, yeah, he just laughed through the whole thing. He just thought it was all ridiculous. But Paco, we talk about this movie all the time because I always say like Greg Kinnear should have played Brian Wilson.
Yes, yeah. That
better.
was the one part about it I was not really cottoning onto. But I thought, what's his name was
Dano
fantastic.
did great. Yeah.
Paul Dano was unbelievable. Yeah, he was unbelievable.
When we got this cat, the previous owners.
Paul Dano should have played him in the second half.
Yeah, they could have just done that.
Yeah,
he put the effort in.
Put a little gray in his hair, and that was a weird choice.
Speaking of casting, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but this movie it's based on Metallica. If you don't know what Some Kind of Monster is about, and we like to do a little game on the show where we cast the biopic version.
Oh, okay.
And I came up with 2 or 3. I don't know, Paco, what you've got for yours, but Dana, if you were putting you on the spot a little bit.
Oh, yeah, you are.
If you're casting, well, then I'll throw out mine. The first one I thought of for Lars Ulrich was Giovanni Ribisi. They kind of have a similar, like, yelly style.
Yep.
And visually, there's a little bit there, too.
Mm-hmm. Vonnie would be a really good Lars Ulrich. James Hetfield, the guy that plays Thor.
Yeah. Chris Hemsworth? Yeah,
Chris Hemsworth would be a good, but he'd have to lose weight and get drunky weight. Or Greg Barrett would play it.
Greg Barrett
as very good James Hetfield.
Is it because of the soul patch?
The soul patch, and Greg is tortured like Hetfield is tortured.
And from the Bay Area.
Yeah,
and
from the Bay Area. He would.
Like
Greg would not mind me saying that.
Yeah.
What about Chris Pratt?
He's tortured.
As James Hetfield.
Chris Pratt would be good, but I know Chris. Chris isn't that dark.
Okay.
Doesn't seem to be that dark. No.
Chris is a hail fellow, well met.
My version of that.
I worked with him on Parks and Rec. That's how I know Chris.
Oh yeah,
nice.
Did you write on that show?
I wrote on the second season.
Yeah, great show.
Well, we had some people say Aaron Paul for Lars.
Oh, I can see that as well. Aaron Paul.
Yeah.
Aaron Paul would be really good. Aaron Paul would be really good.
Here's my because we asked some listeners how they would cast this. Here's some of my favorite. Brian Posehn as James Hetfield.
He would do it.
I like that a lot of the cast is from my Christmas card list, which I like.
Yeah. Doug Henning is Kirk Hammett.
Doug Henning.
The magician from the 70s.
Yeah. Martin Scarelli as Lars Ulrich.
Oh, jeez.
Once he gets out of jail. Yeah. And Robert Trujillo is Robert Trujillo.
Yeah. It's hard
Robert Trujillo would play a great Robert Trujillo.
Yeah, he would. It's a typecast, but...
Kirk would be... I'm not sure... No one is leaping to mind for Kirk, but...
it's a hard one.
The guy for the Shrink... I would cast.
Oh, the Shrink, yeah.
I'm blanking on his name. He played the robot in Aliens.
Yes.
Of the show Millennium.
Yeah, he's a genre guy.
Yeah.
And Lance Henriksen. Yeah,
Lance Henriksen would be. I
totally see that.
Yeah,
that is a good call on that one.
Yeah. I like when he's just writing lyrics on Post-its. Push through.
Yeah.
And they start making fun of it.
He's like, I got to sign up for BMI now.
Yeah. I remember I was married and got divorced, and we did go to a couples therapist. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, this isn't working, and we'd agreed to get divorced. And then we went to a different couples therapist to help us through our mediation because we had 3 children and we didn't want it to get we wanted it to stay amicable because it had been. And we sat with our new therapist for about 35 seconds and we turned to each other and went like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Because we knew that had we gone to this guy, we wouldn't have been getting divorced.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And by that time, the toothpaste was out of the tube.
Yeah, it's hard to put it back in.
Yeah, but we knew. But that's not a lie, and that's not apocryphal. And my ex-wife would say the same thing. Wow. We just looked at each other, and it was like,
the wrong guy.
Yeah, wrong dude.
Yeah.
What makes a good therapist a good therapist? Like, what was the shining example of? Like, what did this person say that you were like, oh, this?
And have we all been in therapy, by the way? In here?
Well, I can only say the couples therapist that we went to that was not great. We had fundamental differences, and he seemed to have the theory of we really needed to fight them out. and get and go work through them. Where our second therapist immediately said, like, these aren't differences. These are things that make you different. But that's not a difference. And he was just like the guy, the drive around guy. Like, you're separate people, but you form a unit, and we're gonna concentrate on the things that help you form a unit. And it was just a completely different worldview, and we were.
And that was
like,
at the point. It was just
no, it was just too late at that
Yeah.
point. It was too late at that point. But we were like, God damn it, God damn it.
You can't glue the broken dishes back together. After
Yeah, and it really, and that's not apocryphal. And so I really do feel like when I watch this movie, like I so get it. The best scene in the movie, and I wrote a pilot based on this basic premise for FX that Dave Grohl produced with me called Discord. CHORD. From the therapist point of view, about a therapist who's a well-known couples therapist who's secretly sleeping in his garage because him and his wife don't communicate, but he can't he can't let his clients know that, and he ends up working with a band.
Right.
And what I thought was the most telling scene, and what's also very interesting about this documentary is later I have a television show called Stand Against Evil on IFC.
Right.
The second season premieres November 1st. Get in a plug.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
while you're waiting, you can just download my album on iTunes, Mr. Funny Man. Oh, did that fall out? Anyway, long story longer. On Kill Rock Stars. And on Billboard, it just says, on Billboard, it has the ranking, the label, and the artist. And so on Billboard, it says, number 3, Kill Dana Gould.
Yeah, that's you need better PR.
I like the message.
Yeah.
But long story, Stand Against Evil is produced by the studio, for lack of a better term, is this company called Radical Media that produced Some Kind of Monster. And so I know all of the inside dope. And it was supposed to be a quick, half-hour making of the album documentary that they were going to release when the album came out. And then James Hetfield walked in one day, like he does in the movie, and says, hey, I have to go to rehab or I'm going to lose my family, and just up and leaves for 9 months.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
And the guys have to spin their wheels for 9 months, and then he comes back a completely different human being. I mean, he looks different.
Yeah.
He is using using words that they don't, like, you're talking about touring, and I'm experiencing fear. And Lars Ulrich going, who the fuck are you?
Right.
And what's amazing in that scene, and there's so many amazing scenes like this, what's amazing in that scene is Ulrich goes, you used to control this band with your drunken rage, and now you control it with your sobriety. And that was so like, yes, yeah, totally. That's exactly what's happening.
Is that the 4 p.m. line? When he's like, let's play a clip from that.
Yeah.
And we'll just throw it back.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
I just think you're so fucking self-absorbed. And what makes it worse is that you always talk about me. You use the word control and manipulation a lot. I think you control on purpose, and I think you control inadvertently. I think you control by the rules you always set. I think you control by how you always judge people. I think you control by your absence. I think you control all of this even when you're not here. And all these rules and all this shit, man. This is a fucking rock and roll band. I don't want fucking rules. I understand that you need to leave at 4. I respect it. But don't tell me I can't sit and listen to something with Bob at 4:15 if I want to. What the fuck is that?
I was in a band, and around 2002 or 3, when this had come out, we actually did see a therapist as a band. But it was like a complicated mix of things. Like, there were 2 brothers in the band, and then one of the brothers was dating the singer, and I lived with them. So it was like there was just so much built up. tension
that's a
all of
Beach
that.
Boys level of internet scene squabbling.
Yeah,
That's like Fleetwood Mac kind of.
But there was
bad
nothing
ideas.
at stake. There were not millions of dollars at stake. It was literally just like Well, we all have to hang out anyway, so we might need a mediator. To
Right.
figure, like one guy
Was
just
this down here
stormed
or
off. It was
up
in
north?
Bay Area, and one guy we were at a show. One member just stormed off. Like I don't think we had played, and he just like the brothers got in a thing, and then he stormed off, and then it was like we kind of just improvised something through the rest of the set, and then it took like a couple weeks for us to like be like, I guess we need to like meet up and figure things out because there's just so much like years and years and years of tension.
Sure, and it's also family tension.
It is. Yeah.
The craziest story I have ever heard, and I don't know that I'm not really under the hood with Fleetwood Mac, although I grew up with. Oh, somebody has a Soda Stream.
Yeah, I love
know
it.
those, but I have a refrigerator full of those bottles.
Oh,
you might
it's
have
my
to
favorite.
cut this. You might have to cut this out.
No, this is like a plug. It's a plug for SodaStream, our new.
Can I
hopefully
just
a
say?
sponsor.
Can I say one thing about Soda Stream?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Pennies a serving.
Yes, it is.
George?
Pennies.
Pennies a serving.
That's from Trader Joe's. It's pretty cheap. This water.
Do you ever get the Torani syrup and add it to your Soda Stream?
No, what I use, and I'm gonna tell you this now. It's a big secret, so I'm glad you're both
Okay.
sitting. Is
Exclusive.
I get the stevia flavoring from Whole Foods, like stevia cola or
Right.
stevia root beer, and you put a couple drops in it, and it's like having a Diet Coke or a root beer, and it's completely free calorically, and it's practically free. Again, I'm going to circle around full. Pennies a serving.
And your hips will thank you.
Your hips will thank you. I can see my feet.
I'm out of the soda game. I got a kidney stone a little bit ago.
Oh,
and they're just
no
like,
wonder.
you gotta
Good
cut
for
that
you.
shit out. When Wayne
That
Fetterman
must
was
be like
here, we made him
peeing
taste
the head of a ventriloquist dummy. I would think that must feel like.
Luckily, I did. I got a wide urethra.
Wait, did you just say? Did Wayne Fetterman give you what?
No,
what
Wayne
was-
Kidney
Fetterman.
stone?
When he was here, he was here. We made him drink.
Oh, right.
The Rowdy Roddy Piper soda.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, "I've never seen They Live." I'm like, "That seems strange." I'm surprised.
I can
by
hear
that.
Wayne. I've never seen They Live. I don't know this soda, but no, I'll drink it. It's
He's
fine.
a wrestler soda tastes like bubble gum. Okay.
What was his documentary?
Oh, he did
Crumb.
Crumb.
Oh, that's a great one
Yeah.
for Wayne. That's a great.
Yeah, we should plug for that one. Listen to Wayne talk about Crumb.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna
Therapy.
say about
Oh, yeah.
the craziest thing, I don't really know that much about Fleetwood Mac. I mean, I know everybody was sleeping with everybody, and I think I think there might have been drugs and alcohol involved, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe just mountains of cocaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the craziest level that I ever heard about with the Beach Boys was in the late 70s or early 80s, I guess. Dennis had impregnated Mike Love's daughter, who was also his second cousin.
Right.
And they were still touring.
Oh, right, because
and-
they're related. Right, yeah.
Yeah, they're cousins.
Oh,
and
man.
so Mike Love had it that throughout the tour, he would never have to set eyes upon Dennis Wilson. And so there were literally part of the setup for the show was like curtained off pathways and the stage was set
No,
up
no.
so that Mike would never have to see
No.
Dennis.
Wow, that's
Did
insane.
she have the kid is the other question.
I think she did. I don't know for sure, but I know that happened. That was like the
Wow.
height of the just the.
They're like, why
I
does
mean,
the
I don't-
page look like a paisley? It's like easier for no one to have eye contact.
Yeah,
this way.
exactly, and you know, and what is also brilliant about that, and this is where this is why I find the Beach Boys more interesting than Metallica. They both come from very dark, savage, emotionally savage places.
Mm-hmm.
But the Beach Boys looked clean cut and sang fun, fun, fun.
Right.
As a way to who else but somebody whose father beat them so hard they went deaf in one ear would write a song called Fun, 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 because you're just yearning for this thing that you can't experience.
Yeah.
Whereas Metallica did what in acting they went with the obvious intention. You know, they were angry, so they screamed.
Low-hanging
Instead
fruit.
of being angry, so you instead of being angry, so you smile.
Yeah.
That's why I find the Beach Boys takes an interesting turn that you don't see. But they're both, especially like you see Lars Ulrich, like Lars Ulrich's dad, speaking of Crumb.
Oh, man.
Lars Ulrich's dad looks like Mr. Natural.
Yeah, he does.
And he's just this German, like,
Yeah.
Lars Ulrich plays him a track and he's so proud of it, and he just strokes his beard and goes, "If I were you, I would delete it." It's just like,
That's the father figure that he comes from. That makes sense.
It makes, and then you look at Lars Ulrich and go, "Yeah, I get it."
He's
Yeah.
also like
Makes
a
sense.
Danish tennis pro or something. His dad
Really?
was like
Of
his dad
course
was
he
like an award-winning tennis player, prize-winning tennis player. So
We've
like,
all been to the tennis awards.
Yeah, they're great. They're really fun.
Yeah, so
I remember when Patton Oswalt hosted it.
like that's like that kind of crazy bearded patriarch. Also, their manager is also a crazy beard man.
Yeah.
The guy Cliff Bernstein from Q Prime. I'm like, okay, you found another father figure, and then the therapist is yet another father figure.
Right.
And they keep chucking them. Like, it's like, because the problem is not your father figure. The problem is, the really interesting documentary that has not been made is John Lennon's quest for parental figures. And that was sad and failing. He would find these people, once he, became a little self-actualized, he would always search for a savior, a father figure, and then he would love them and then turn on them. And first it was like Brian, and then Brian Epstein, and then Brian died. Then it was the Maharishi, and then he turned on the Maharishi. Then it was Arthur Yanov, who did Primal Scream Therapy. Then it was Alan Klein. Then he turned on Alan Klein. Then it was Arthur Yanov, who did Primal Scream Therapy. Like, he was always searching for these people and then turning on them because they let him down, because he had given them an impossible job.
Did he do that to George Martin?
I don't think they did it to George Martin, but it was clearly with, like, Brian Epstein was definitely a father figure, and the other psychological aspect of the whole thing. There's a really brilliant book called "You Never Give Me Your Money," which is the psychological breakdown of the Beatles breakup as if it was a divorce. And what you see is, especially with John and Paul, these two guys whose mothers died when they were very young, who became completely codependent on each other, could not leave each other until they had replaced their mothers. Paul with Linda and John with Yoko.
Oh, man.
And then once they had replaced their mothers, they grew apart because they began to self-actualize again.
Whoa.
And what really, and of the two in the book, and when you break it down, Paul is vastly more mature than John. And what you see is John doing everything he can to break up the band, short of breaking up the band. And then finally Paul saying, "Well, fuck it, I'm out." And then John going ballistic because he didn't get to announce it. It's really fascinating. And it really, when you look at it that way, the first father figure that John tried to destroy was the Beatles, but he didn't have the balls to do it. But he was the first one that brought Yoko into the studio and go, "She's with me now, we're one person," which anybody would say is a textbook bad decision.
Yeah.
And they would always do that, and that's part of our culture, that we have this false belief in a soulmate, that you're going to meet the perfect person and your life is going to be changed and you'll be one person. And our pop culture is littered with songs that are completely wrong, and there's, God only knows what I'd be without you, I can't live if living was without you, you complete me. All these things are wrong. All these things are psychologically fucked up. And John Lennon specifically made such, he would say, like, Yoko and I we're John and Yoko, we're one person now. Any psychologist would go, flag,
Right.
flag on the play. And, suddenly this person that, these guys have been in the most successful band in the history of popular culture. And suddenly there's somebody new in the studio offering their opinions as if they're an equal, and they have no.
Sounds a little bit like someone we see in this film.
Yeah, it's very provocative. And the other, and then he accuses them of being. Then he accuses them of hating Yoko and of being male chauvinist. It's like, no, it's because we've been four guys for 8 years, and now we're four guys and a girl. This woman doesn't even play guitar, and I have to take her notes.
Right.
But he couldn't pull the trigger on the band. It was finally Paul that announced it.
It's just total like sabotage internally. Yeah.
What do you think about creativity?
And he was furious that he did it. I might have certain facts wrong. I mean, the Beatles breakup is well documented. There are also legal reasons that they didn't announce it because Let It Be was coming out or some nonsense. But it is true. Just to finish the point, I'm sorry I interrupted you, Paco.
That's fine.
That John and Paul couldn't leave each other until they had replaced their mothers, and then once they had replaced their mothers, they had to leave each other, which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then both of them made their wives musical partners when they weren't up to the task.
Wings, yeah.
Wings and John and Yoko. I mean,
I like the John and Yoko stuff though. I like the release. There's the one Green record I like a lot. Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah.
But. If the Yoko cuts on Double Fantasy are not the best cuts on that album.
No. And the Plastic Man was...
Yeah, Yoko Ono is no Paul McCartney. and
no, she's like a Fluxus performance art person.
Yeah, exactly, which is great. But it's just fascinating that's how it went down. It was so by the book.
Yeah,
It was so by the book.
Replace the mother figure.
Yeah. And George Harrison is like, and then in every family. There was
Kirk Hammett.
There's Kirk Hammett or George Harrison
or me
or in my family of origin me or in the Doors it was John Densmore, the guy that just silently
play drums and
the peacemaker that tries to get everybody to get along, gets everybody's ulcer for them because they internalize everything.
I was the guy who suggested therapy for my band and like
That's funny.
Did a lot of like dad stuff in my band.
Sure.
I was the oldest, but it still was just like I don't feel like this is what I should be doing.
Yeah, no, it's really it's difficult, and every that dynamic exists in every group, and in Kirk Hammett you can see the poor bastard's hair falling out, and then suddenly his hairline gets lower again
and grayer.
And grayer. But you can see him having everyone else's ulcer.
Mom and dad are fighting.
Yeah, and he just internalizes it all.
Which is interesting because another thing that sets the whole thing off is Jason Newsted leaving, which on one level you look at it and you're like, you just kind of screwed yourself, but maybe it was the healthiest boundary for him to establish.
I think it is amazing that he just goes, well, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And
bread and butter.
I left The Simpsons.
I was going to say, how...
And my father, who always gives me the worst advice, said, I wouldn't do it. It's always like... But
But where's The Simpsons now? I mean,
I would, if I stayed there, I would be much, much wealthier than I am now, and I would be much more miserable and probably about 400 pounds.
Yeah. Was it a hard working environment? One of the questions.
No, it was lovely. It was beautiful. It was lovely. I loved doing it, but I was really done, and I was I didn't. I've always had just to talk about myself for a moment. It's like now I have a TV show and a comedy album out. I like to do other things. I like to perform, and I'm also a writer. And with The Simpsons, it was just that one thing. And I've always been a much bigger fan of me than of the show.
Right. But what I was going to ask you is creativity by consensus. It never works, right? I mean, what's your thought on that?
It depends on who is making the consensus. If it's one writer and 8 executives, probably not. If it's 12 brilliant writers, it's probably going to be good. The funniest joke in my the funniest of all the episodes that I wrote, the joke that makes me laugh the hardest.
Yeah.
I not only did not write, I don't know who wrote it. And I think I know who wrote it because I know it's his voice, but it's never been confirmed. I think it was Tom Gamble. And it was an episode I wrote called Papa's Got a Brand New Badge, where Homer starts a home security system like ADT.
Right.
And the thing with writing comedy or writing music or writing novels, probably more than anything, is you can see where you are in your life by what you're writing about. And at this point, I was newly married. I had bought a house. I was being an adult for the first time in my life. And part of buying a house was we had to get home security system, and it's like you were exposed to these things that you'd never be exposed to before. And I thought that'd be an interesting thing. What if Homer did that?
Right.
So there was a bit in the show where they were doing a commercial for Homer's home security company, which is called Spring Shield. And there's an old woman sitting alone in her apartment, and then a Maurice Sendak-like monster walks in, and the woman goes, "Monster!" And then Homer and the home security team comes in and goes, "Never fear, Spring Shield is here." And then the monster looks at Homer and goes, "Friend?" And Homer goes, "You always have a friend with Spring Shield." And he gives him a card, and the monster takes the card and says, "Monster put in wallet." And then the monster takes out a wallet and puts the card in his wallet. And so you also have this, okay, so wait a minute. Is the monster real? Does the monster not know there's a commercial going on?
Right.
and just monster put in wallet is I love so much. I did not think of it, but it's in my episode. But that's a great example of just a great collaboration, where it's a bunch of people. You get a lot of great people adding and making things better. So in that regard, it's always it's who makes the consensus. As
Well,
they
there's
say, a camel
there's
is a horse
collaboration,
by
and then
committee.
you need someone though at the top, don't you, to be like, we need to move on, we got it.
Totally,
Or
yeah,
That
yeah.
that
And
sucks, and that's good.
Yeah, and that's and I'm that guy on my show, so it's sometimes it. I've had episodes where okay, that's a 6.
right.
But
Yes.
but you
Your
got to go.
show's
You got to
Stan
get it
versus
on.
Evil, which premieres November 1st, second season.
Yeah, stand against evil.
Oh, Stand Against,
Yes.
right.
It's Ash versus the Evil Dead and Stand Against Evil. And everybody compares the two. So if you'll indulge me 30 seconds.
Please.
They're both horror comedies starring a gruff guy. And the titles are similar. But I see how people think that that it's a ripoff. I can only say that if I was going to rip off a show, I wouldn't then give it a very similar title. I would go in the completely opposite direction. This show was in development before Ash versus Evil Dead premiered, which is not to say I love Evil Dead 2. I love Army of Darkness. I love Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi. I know those. I've met them. I've worked with Bruce, and I love them.
Bruce, the hero of Kalamazoo. I love Bruce.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the best. But all this it's very simple. If you watch my show, it was based on the premise, a very simple premise. What if Dana Scully from the X-Files was partnered with my dad instead of David Duchovny?
That's awesome.
That's the show.
I love Janet, by the way.
Yeah, she's brilliant. And the title was just a play on the phrase "Stand Against Evil." I changed the character's name to Stan after I
so
thought
versus
the title.
doesn't really.
Yeah, but I mean, and people go, "It's a ripoff." Like, yeah, well, Winston Churchill and Jim Belushi are both fat guys that smoke cigars, but they're also very different.
That's an apt comparison. Yeah.
Which is
I
not to say
I go
don't,
way back with Janet.
I like the show. Janet is. I wrote the part for Janet.
Nice.
I never envisioned anybody else playing that part, and she had to audition for it, and came in first, and nobody got near her.
Yeah, I bet she's so talented.
Yeah.
I did the Plan 9 with you guys at Sketchfest this last year.
Right.
And, it was great to see her again. She and I go way back in sketch comedy here in San Francisco. She's a genius. I love Janet.
Yeah, she is, and she never, ever plays the wrong note. And the show has a very specific tone, and it's scary and it's funny, and she just effortlessly knows where to go. I mean, it's never. I think the only note I've ever given her was like, "Can you back up 2 feet? Because you're out of your key light there." It's just. I mean, her performances are always just like gorgeous.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And you created it. You're also the showrunner?
Yeah.
And head writer?
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
It's only 8 episodes, so.
When do you know, like, when you've got what you're looking for?
You don't. That's the beautiful thing. It's funny, it's like with the show, what happened with the show, and My father is a very big personality. I've described him a lot as Archie Bunker without the elegance and sophistication. And he's still around. He's 87. And he is the largest mountain range in my psychic landscape.
Sure.
And I wrote a pilot in 2010 based on the premise, what if my dad came and lived with my mother and with my boy, there's a Freudian slip. What if, wow. Let's get the therapist in here right now.
Let's get Phil the therapist.
Yeah.
What if, here's a post-it note.
Exactly. As opposed to what if my father came and lived with my wife and our kids, with the children, and how these two progressive people with these groovy kids with this very old school 20s mid-century guy, Fox News watching guy, and I played me in the pilot, and Brian Dennehy played my dad, and
Perfect.
He was flawless,
Yeah.
and he was brilliant,
Yeah,
and
of course.
the pilot got made, but it didn't get picked up to series. But when I saw it, I was like, all right, well, that character works. That character works. And then I just literally thought, well, I want to do something else. And I thought, well, what if I just put him in a show where he didn't belong? And everybody had to deal with him. And then I said, what if you put my dad in the X-Files instead of David Duchovny? And then everybody's fighting monsters and they're all on the same page, and you get this guy that doesn't give a shit. But you have to deal with him. And that's the show. It was that simple. It was that simple.
That's awesome.
And that was the origin of the show. So it led into itself. So to that degree, I knew that the character worked. I knew that the idea worked. I didn't know the show was going to work until the first day of shooting, when we had a scene where this old crone demon witch character, she comes into the sheriff's station where Janet works as a sweet old lady, and then Janet looks away and she turns back and she's this hideous demon, and she jumps up on the desk and screams at her. And when I saw that in the monitor, and the actor Mick Ignis, who played the woman,
She's great.
yeah, he's great. He's great. It's Mick. It's a dude. It's a dude who plays a lot of our chicks. I know.
Really?
I'm gonna get letters.
Email him, not us.
And a lot of he's a suit actor. There are these guys that
Okay,
work
like
really
an Andy
amazing in
Serkis
suits.
kinda guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mick's
Oh, wow.
brilliant. And the minute I saw that work on the monitor, I knew it was going to work. He was so good, and Janet was so good. I was like, great, okay, if this works, let's just go. But it's like with stand-up. I thought of a joke the other night. I've been doing stand-up for 35 years, and I still don't know before I try it if it's going to work.
Right. Have you ever tried any lines out on an audience that are for the sitcom that you're like, maybe I should try this line out on a live audience?
No, never that. But I've said stuff on my podcast that just in conversation that I've later said that I could do that on stage. That's almost a bit.
Oh, right.
And they grow into bits that way. But I came up with a joke the other night that I thought oh great, this will work perfectly, and it lays there like a turd. And I thought and it's exciting because you still never know. And it was a good joke. I'm in a relationship now that I hadn't been for a while, and I met her. I've known her for a long time, but I'm in a really great relationship. And I said that once you've been single for a long, after being married, when you're single again, your attitudes towards relationships is like a shower on a cold morning. You're afraid to get in, but once you're in, you don't want to leave. And I thought, yeah, that's awesome. And then I told 3 times, It's just whatever. The alchemy isn't there sometimes.
Right.
And I've done bits that I thought were great, and the part that I didn't think was that funny is the best part, and the part that I thought that was funny just kind of lies there. You just never know.
It's the same as Twitter. Sometimes you can get it just reads well and it looks great and people dig it, and you try it on stage and it just doesn't happen. You know, like a tweet.
Or you don't get a lot of don't get a lot of play.
All my Kofefe material does not work anymore. It did that first. No,
It's a shelf thing.
I said I was talking about guns in my act, and to make it work with audiences, you have to say I'm not there to, everybody who's in the audience paid to be there, and they want to see a show and they don't want to be spoken down to. And so what I have to say is, like, when I talk about guns, I talk about how people, when that our new national pastime is announcing that we're offended. That's what we're the best at. That's the only thing we make anymore is outrage. And that despite the fact that progressives and liberals are always called snowflakes because they're always offended by things, it's actually the super right wing that get the most offended and squeal the loudest. And you won't find anyone who squeals louder than a gun lover. And then I have to say, I'm not talking about people who own guns and use them. If you own a gun, people own guns to do things that they love. People own guns to go hunting. And I get that. And I do get that. I don't do it, but every member of my family does it. I grew up in a house full of guns. I had a gun cabinet in my bedroom because it was the only room in the house that it fit in. I woke up and looked at 9 rifles in high school. So
And you're from Massachusetts.
Yeah, I'm from the middle of Massachusetts. Everybody in my family but me voted for Trump.
Right.
But I do get those people. I'm not talking about people who use guns to go hunting or to defend their family or their police officer. I'm talking about people who love guns, because loving a gun is like loving a flashlight. And it's really, you have to look at what it means to you.
You can also do that.
Yeah,
and
it's
you called something else.
Yeah, it's called flashlight. But you have to
a gun you can fuck. I got a great idea. Let's make a
oh
show.
my God, that would go.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Let's market that now.
Yeah.
Your wide urethra. Okay, never mind.
But the point is, like, you have to allow people to laugh at it. And even if somebody in the audience does love guns, you've given them permission to say, well, he's not talking about me, so I can laugh. And then you can make your point. You're not going to make a point by saying, well, you're an idiot and here's why. You make a point to somebody by going, I understand what you're saying. Here's another way to look at it, but I totally get what you're saying. Because people have to be open to your point of view.
Right.
And I mention, and this was just part of the setup, and it's true. The other day I tweeted, hurricanes are bad. I'm just putting this here to watch it turn into an argument.
Right.
And it did.
Of course.
Oh, man.
And that gets a huge laugh. But it's not a joke. It's just a true observation.
Right.
And it just shows you how we misuse technology. Of course we don't treat guns right because we're just shaved apes. We're just a feral chimp swamp in the universe. And that we use the smartphone was supposed to unite us with our common humanity by putting the world of information at our fingertips. Look how united we are now.
Yeah.
And that was the point. But you never know what's going to work.
Right.
Still, and that's to circle around to some kind of monster. It's very interesting to see these guys because their band has fallen apart.
Yeah.
And as they're making this album, which is not a good album.
No, I don't think anyone thinks it's.
Yeah.
No, it's widely panned.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're just eating shit to keep going.
Right.
And I get it. Like I've been in the middle. I do.
Yeah.
There have been episodes on, The Simpsons or my show. It's like, this is not one of our best, but the only way out is through, and we gotta go.
Yeah.
And
It's just so public with them. It's just becoming so public with these guys.
That's sort of the beauty of
Yeah.
it too. It's like to use the Beatles, like let it be, not great. You gotta keep going.
Yeah.
And Pete Townsend said, like, had Keith Moon not died, the Who would have broken up. But Keith Moon dying kept them going because suddenly it was exciting again because they didn't know if it would work anymore.
Wow.
Right.
That's interesting.
And something became at risk. Oh my God, this might not work.
I mean,
Let's try it.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
speaking of, that does bring up like a big thing in the whole Metallica lore is Cliff Burton dying in '86.
Right.
And then like Jason Newsted, I was watching another interview with Jason Newsted, and it was this thing of like he like auditioned for them like maybe like 2 weeks after they like scattered Cliff Burton's ashes. And I didn't know this. Like the only reason they ended up in the Bay Area was like Cliff Burton lived in like El Cerrito.
Oh,
so
really?
They all had to move there. So Kirk Hammett lived in the Bay Area, but like, the reason they moved to the Bay Area from L.A., I guess.
Lars and James are from down
started
here.
here. So they became, and we know them as like I'm a Bay Area person, so
Right.
like that was like the biggest band out of the Bay
Sure,
Area.
yeah,
After
yeah.
Journey and then Metallica.
Yeah.
So like,
It was the biggest good band.
Yeah, it was good. So like that, like
When the lights go down in the city.
grew up with all the
I
the
know.
Journey
I lived
video
up there.
game. Yeah, you were there for a while. You were Boston and then there, right?
Yeah, Boston, San Francisco.
Did you? Were you there same time Ron Lynch? Because he did the same.
Yeah,
path. He did
Ron
Boston
moved
to
into my
SF.
apartment.
Is this okay? This is a comedy condo we were talking
Yeah,
about.
I started the comedy
That was
condo.
one of the questions that we got.
Yeah,
on
I started the
Facebook.
comedy. Me and a guy named Alex Reed, who lives down here as a TV writer and TV director now.
I think it's finally done, though.
It is done, but
Yeah.
we started it in October of '86.
Yeah.
And that was for touring comics or any comic that
It was
lived in
just
San
our.
Francisco?
It was just our apartment. The first 3 people in it were me and Alex and a friend of mine from Boston named Lori Sullivan, who was a waitress at Played Again Sam's Comedy Club in Boston. Who moved out there with me. We were just friends. I dated her roommate for a while, but and then Lori moved out, and then I moved to L.A., and I think Ron moved in, and then Janine Garofalo lived there a while. Liz Winstead lived there a while, and everybody slept there. John Stewart slept there. I mean, everybody who went through town slept there at some point. And it was, it was this legendary thing, but Alex and I started.
Last
And it
thing,
was
I talked
That's
to
awesome.
Ron about it once, and he said I think the last person there was John Hugasian, and then he let it go, and Ron was still like salty about it.
Yeah.
He's just like,
Well, that sounds like both of them.
Yeah, it does. Also, Dan Spencer says you still owe him money for the water bill.
That sounds right. And Danny was my roommate in Boston.
This is a podcast
really?
where just grievances
Yeah.
from the past come back at you. Just
lived
like
with Dan
Metallica.
You lived with Dan in Boston?
Yeah, in Alston, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
Glenville Avenue.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
He's great.
I
love Dan
talked to him
Spencer.
last week. I love Dan.
Oh, man. He's one
Yeah.
of my favorites. He actually introduced me to Barry Crimmins, who I was a huge fan of when I was a teenager watching those Showtime comedy
Right.
specials. Barry Crimmins used to host them, and it was back when Harry Anderson would throw it back to Boston. And
Sure,
they would throw
yeah.
you
Right, I
remember those?
Yeah.
And I love Barry Crimmins. I got to meet him, and I told Barry, I'm like, I know all your jokes. I memorized them when I was a kid. And he's like, let me hear one. And I did a couple of his jokes, and he's like, beer's on me tonight. It was awesome.
That's great. My favorite joke of Barry's, and I say it to people, but I do quote him. It's like when
Nice.
people go, like when you complain about the government and they people, move. Because then I'd be victimized by our foreign policy.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's on his most recent record. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great bit.
He
It's
did
a
this
great
joke
bit.
about I got arrested for smuggling books into Kentucky, but I got off on a technicality.
Yeah,
Just
nobody could prove
their-
there were books.
Nice.
I love it. Have you seen Call Me Lucky?
Yeah, I'm in Call Me Lucky.
Oh, of course. Yes, that's right.
I'm ubiquitous.
You're in every document.
I'm in
Except for
many.
some kind of monster.
I mean, yeah, I'm in every documentary except some kind of monster.
And you said, so the production company you worked with.
Yeah,
they
Radical
also, what were some other behind the scenes little tidbits that you got out of it?
Well, they didn't know what was happening. They just decided, and they're brilliant. They made the Nina Simone documentary that was
Okay.
last year.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're really.
Yeah.
They made Fog of War. They did all Errol Morris's stuff. They're
Jeez.
they're brilliant. And it's
Are you the only fiction stuff they do?
I'm their first scripted show.
Oh,
in a long
really?
time. Yeah,
That's
and it's
amazing.
funny too because I was ragging on John Lennon. The guy that runs the company, this guy Frank Sherma, is very much. He's only a couple years older than I am, but he's a grown up, and I'm a goon.
He's adulting.
Yeah, he adults much better than I do, and I've absolutely made him like a father figure to me. Like I go to him with like, what do I do with them? What do I do
Yeah.
about this? Like
Yeah.
he's. So I totally did that. He's like a very much a paternal figure.
Yeah.
But they did not know what was happening, and they were just smart enough to just keep shooting, and they had to vamp while he was
right.
in rehab,
Right.
and but out of that came this amazing stuff, like when Lars Ulrich sits down with Dave Mustaine.
that was.
That's-
we
man.
got to talk about
That's
that. That's nuts.
chilling, and that's
Yeah.
like a whole other documentary in and of itself.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just the raw hurt in Dave
so much hurt.
Mustaine, and the Trumpian lack of empathy from Lars Ulrich is
It was it was nuts because I was like, oh yeah, like I had only watched this for the first time to do this, and like
Right.
I'm like, what the fuck is this scene? How did this happen?
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like this, like the enmity between those guys is like legendary.
Yeah.
And when
there's
Dave
a lot of
was-
eye
It's
rolling.
like Lou Barlow and Jay Mascis getting back together. That when that happened, I'm like, what
Yeah.
did hell freeze over?
when you see W. Mustaine talk about like walking down the street and some kid says, "You fucking blew it." And he's like, "I get that every day," and you can just see the pain and the anger. And if unless I recall it incorrectly, Lars Ulrich just kind of laughs at him.
He kind of rolls his eye. He just does that Lars Ulrich thing where he kind of gets into a little ball and just
Yeah.
kind of rolls his eye, and
Who do
he's
you-
just
I-
dreaming of tennis.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought what I've been through?
I think I've had an awareness of the pain I caused you.
That's not what I said.
Okay.
Do you have any idea
Of what I put you through.
what? No. What I went through. I mean, people hate me because of you. You know, I walk down the street and I hear some piece of shit say Metallica at me, and they do that to taunt me. I mean, when I would hear Metallica on the radio, I would be like, God, I have to turn this off because I just keep thinking, I fucked up.
When James goes back after rehab,
Yeah.
that's me when I visit my family. Because I just speak a completely different language than all of them. I've been in, I'm in recovery. I'm in therapy, and all, so it's just like they never, just like you completely. Like, who are you? What?
Right, and they're like super
Right.
East Coast, like
Yeah,
just
super.
Like,
Nobody feels like Bob Rock though, because that's a paid position. You know,
he is an interesting character though because he seems
I know.
okay with whatever happens
because he's Canadian.
Well, that might be part of it. He made his money.
I'm in the documentary being Canadian. I'm just saying.
You're from Winnipeg,
I'm
right?
not. I'm
originally?
from Massachusetts, but my best friend made it.
Oh, you're being serious.
I'm totally serious. There's a documentary.
God.
There's a really great documentary called "Being Canadian" by Rob Cohen, who's
That's
a
awesome.
writer director who lives here in Los Angeles, and it's about the cultural shock of what Canada is and why so many people from Canada are great comedians and just the cultural. It's sort of the global little brother.
Yeah.
And it's a really brilliant documentary, and
There is
although
so
I'm
much
not Canadian, I am in it.
There's so much good comedy from there. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, there's
SCTV and all that stuff.
Yeah.
is-
Even
yeah.
current like comics. I know a bunch of comics from Toronto, and they're like
Yeah, they're amazing.
killers.
Like Kids in the Hall.
Because they develop, and then they get down here, and they've got all like this.
Yeah,
whole other
it's just
flavor.
Canada itself has this sort of like sheepish little brother attitude but until now, and now they're like, now we're the like dad's drunk and he moved,
Yeah.
dad
Cool-
moved,
cool
dad
brother.
left mom and moved in with a waitress from the bar, and they live in a one-room apartment over the drugstore. We were the dad that went crazy.
Yeah.
I smell a pilot.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, Trudeau. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's really true. It's now Canada's like
Ryan
we're sending
Goslingized.
Canada to the door now when the bill collectors show up. Canada, we do go to the door, and we can't have dad talk to the bill collectors.
Well, if we ever make a documentary about SUP Doc, we'd like to have you be a part of it. But Bob Rock, I'm like, that can't be his name. That can't be a real name. But apparently, like, how do you turn into a rock producer with the last name of Rock? Like, it's like if his last name was like Bob Powercord or something.
Oh, my casting for him was Kato Kalin. Like now.
Oh, right.
An aged Kato Kalin.
Yeah.
Just like I was just in the back room. I don't know what the fight
But
is about.
I really like him.
I like him too. He has boundaries with people.
He has boundaries with people, and I still remember. I love Lennon. He goes, "Yeah, sometimes you just got to gut through it." It's like, yeah, this isn't happening. It's not happening. You're right.
Yeah.
But we don't have a choice. We just have to gut through it. And I really admire that. And that's some of the best life advice ever. Like, I said to somebody not too long ago who was having a really hard time, you will get everything you want in life if you just keep getting out of bed. And, that's a huge part of it. Showing up is such a huge part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it really
Well,
is.
What's Michael McKean? Who's the guy from Better Call Saul?
Michael McKean.
From
Michael McKean.
Yeah, he would be a good Bob.
He would be a
Rock,
good
too.
Bob Rock.
Okay. I can see that.
He
too,
is a
yeah.
great, and one of the coolest guys in the world.
Yeah, I bet.
Super funny, super smart.
Spinal Tap.
He's a music guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He's great.
Did they play? Did they all play Christopher Guest and all this?
Yeah, they all play.
Spinal Tap really plays
They all
instruments,
play.
right? Yeah, Harry Shearer plays bass. Is that right? Yeah.
Derek Smalls.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know what
wow.
I was listening to this morning and I haven't listened to for a long, long time, and it's kind of it's not as good as Spinal Tap, but it's one of those things that was so big in its day, and now people like kind of don't even remember it. The Blues Brothers.
Oh,
Oh, dude.
In the late
Briefcase Full of Blues.
In the late 70s, everybody had that album. In 1978, everybody had Let's Get Small and Briefcase Full
Right.
of Blues. Everybody
Yeah.
had those albums. And the,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the
Jeff Skunk Baxter.
Steve Martin Best Fishes poster up in their bedroom. And
Yeah.
and when you listen to it now, it's like, yeah, it's just white guys singing black people
Right.
music. I'd much
Right.
rather
Yeah.
hit the,
Once they
I'd
made-
much rather
once
hit
they
the
made,
originals of all of these.
Yeah, totally.
Once they made Blues Brothers 2000, I think it just, you
Yeah.
know, after that, you're like, let's put this to bed.
But somebody, John Landis, who directed Blues Brothers, was telling me he was talking to someone about the Blues Brothers, and they were looking at the scene where they were singing with either Aretha Franklin or Cab Calloway.
Oh yeah, the Cab Calloway scene. Yeah.
And they said, why did you make this movie? And he said, so you'll watch this. It's not John and Dan. It's,
Right.
You're seeing Cab Calloway. You're seeing Aretha
Right.
Franklin. You're seeing Ray Charles.
Yeah,
you're seeing
There's
all of
nothing
these.
wrong with the action on this.
Yeah,
piano.
they're seeing all of these people that really that introduced them to a whole other audience.
Sure.
And that was the great thing about that movie.
Yeah,
And
Right.
my favorite thing, which when I asked John about it, is he just shrugged, which is the best answer ever. A car goes off an overpass, and then it's 5 miles above the surface. Like the car goes over the overpass, and then suddenly it's dropping down from like an airplane height.
It is like a goddamn cartoon. The whole thing's
They
like a
got that
cartoon.
happening.
That's awesome.
Did John Landis do American Werewolf too?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
talk to him about that?
I did. Well, yeah, we worked together, and that's all I talked to him
With
about because that's in my
Werewolf, yeah.
top 3-4 movies
Yeah, that's
of all
one of the
time.
greats, yeah.
And the tone of American Werewolf, that I stole.
Yeah.
Blind.
That's
Like-
the fucking last
Ash
when the song comes
Ash
in.
vs. Evil Dead has a very similar title. In terms of tone, I robbed John Landis blind.
Like actually scary and actually funny.
And funny, and the people are funny in the same way that they're funny in American Werewolf. The algorithms of that movie and the algorithms of my show, the chemical theorem of that movie and the chemical theorem of my show are identical. John, if
Interesting.
you're listening, I robbed you blind.
Nice.
You'd get Griffin Dunn in a role.
I love Griffin. I love Griffin. Yeah, but I met Griffin Dunn at the party. I was like, I can't believe I'm meeting you. And I said, you're in my favorite movie of all time. I was like, After Hours. Like, no, American Werewolf.
I think After Hours.
Fuck
After Hours is awesome.
It's in one of
After
my-
Hours is a
it's one
movie
of my
made
top
totally
10s.
irrelevant by the invention of the ATM.
That's true. That
Right.
20 going up.
Right.
Like lift. You do
After
the
Hours
After
is-
Hours with a lift. Yeah.
But and by the way, no, this has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but Raiders of the Lost Ark and Blade Runner.
yeah.
Two seminal motion pictures. It came out one after the other,
Yeah.
both starring Harrison Ford. Arguably his two best movies. Yeah, but you'd have to put Star Wars in there. In terms of screenwriting, Indiana Jones and Rick Deckard are both completely irrelevant to those plots. Indiana Jones's job is to prevent the Nazis from getting the Ark. He fails. The Nazis open the Ark, and the Ark defends itself. Had he not interjected, it is possible that the Ark would have gone straight to Hitler, and then Hitler would have opened it, and the Ark would have killed Hitler, and there wouldn't have been a World War II. So maybe you can say Indiana Jones gave us World War II. Rick Deckard's job is to kill all of the replicants. He fails. The last replicant dies on his own, and Rick takes off.
That's true.
That's
And we
funny.
still don't know if he is a replicant or not. It's not made clear in the new film.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. It's
Yeah.
not okay.
That's not much of a spoiler because it's possible I missed it.
Right.
But it's a great movie. I loved it. Go see it.
yeah. Planning on.
I want to see the new Steven Spielberg doc that's out.
about
Yeah, I'd like to
about
see that.
him.
Yeah.
About
It's
him.
about Steven
Oh yeah, it's
Spielberg.
HBO.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on HBO. Are you in it, Dana?
No, which is strange because I'm in every documentary. But
Yeah.
but
Have you guys ever heard Echo Brain? Did you guys
No.
ever?
No, what's
that was
Echo Brain?
Jason Newsted's band. That
Oh, really?
They're playing at Bimbos.
They're playing at Bimbos.
I was like,
and
I
they
recognize
go.
the back area of Bimbos and
right.
everything.
And that's all a part of the vamping. Like,
Yeah.
well, let's
need
go
something.
see Echo Brain.
Yeah.
And they're
and
just
then he
Bimbos.
leaves. He jets out of there. He like ghosts them. It's awesome.
Yeah, and then just like watching Lars be frustrated is like hilarious. There's just like endless gifs of Lars getting frustrated.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
Yeah.
what's also interesting is like the thing that Lars caught a lot of shit about, you know, in terms of Napster. Like,
Yeah.
he was really, he was right.
Yeah, he was.
Right.
You know, it's just one of those things like kill the messenger.
Right.
Lars
Right.
was completely correct about that.
Well, it was like, yeah, like you couldn't at that point put the genie back in the bottle. You can't put the toothpaste back
Yeah.
in, as it were. But
Right.
like, yeah, they did. They just had to figure out another way to like. I mean, the entire music industry has changed so much since
Yeah.
like this thing came out.
Yeah.
and I guess the video industry is on the same path.
Yeah,
now.
and I have friends who are, you know, I have friends that are professional musicians, and they don't, you know, they make. How you doing? Well, if it wasn't for the internet, I'd be doing great.
Yeah.
They go out on the road because that's the only way you can make money.
You have to, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
how it works
yeah.
now.
That's the only way you can sort of monetize your life, your work. But it
Oh, I
is.
know.
He caught, and there's a lot of people like that caught a ton of shit.
Mm-hmm.
But as it turns out in retrospect, yeah, they were right.
Yeah, I mean, Napster's
Right.
not around anymore either. Is the thing. So
Yeah.
it's like just like everything else, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spotify.
But it's like, yeah, it's not cool that artists create stuff and then people just take it for free. I did a show, a stand-up show, me and Bobcat, a couple of other people. It was in Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobcat's a real good friend. Bobcat, Dan Spencer's old roommate.
Oh wow.
And the host of the show was ridiculing the audience for paying to see movies because you can rip them all on BitTorrent. And you're a moron if you pay for a movie. And then Bob goes on and goes, you know, I make my own movies and I put my own money into those movies. And I just like to say to the host, you're a fucking asshole.
Host is like 27 or
No,
something.
yeah, no, the host is famous. I won't say his name. I'll tell you his name off camera,
Yeah.
off mic, because I don't want to
Yeah.
embarrass him. But it was like, yeah, actually, Bob's right. You're wrong. You're
Yeah.
a fucking asshole.
Yeah. I mean, I
That's
used to do a
hilarious.
show.
It's nice when people get paid for their work.
Yeah, I mean, I did a show
Yes.
in the basement of a video store up until like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So it's like the whole arc of video stores has gone like so far down. Like,
Yeah, there's
there's
so
barely any left.
Yeah, there's, and you know, hopefully, you know, there's. Yeah, what's still open up there? Is La Video still open?
I
Yes.
think they finally
No.
they sold their collection to Alamo Draft
Yes.
House.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And well, there's one by the New Beverly, right? There's
Yes, there
that's
is.
still
I've,
there. It's still there, but I went in there and it was just dead.
Yeah.
So dead.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody. I
Yeah.
mean,
Cinephile, is that Cinephile? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to get a DVD of the first season of Stand Against Evil, and they were like, "A what?" You know,
You're like, did you guys? You didn't manufacture? They didn't manufacture them. They won't do it.
No, they
won't
just
do
it doesn't move. They just
Yeah.
and I don't have a physical copy of my new album.
Did they didn't make any
Weird.
physical copies? For
No,
this one? Yeah.
I said, do you want copies? Do you want a CD run that you can sell on the road? And I go, no, because
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm not Mr. Haney from Green Acres. I don't like to just open up a little
Trench
store
coat of,
after. Yeah,
CDs.
but I would like a vinyl. Like I like the vinyl. I like a tangible thing.
Kill Rockstars will make a cassette for you.
Yeah, or a DVD, or like I'd like a vinyl.
Did you do
release.
video of the set? Is there video of the set?
No,
No, okay,
just
yeah.
and that was a creative decision.
Mm-hmm.
I was, you know, material. I guess it's the same with songs, and you would be able to tell me better than I would know. Is that, you know, you can feel when a batch of material is sort of ripe and ready to go, and then it's gonna start to rot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and this hour of material was at its peak of perfection, I felt. And I was getting ready to take the summer off and go to Atlanta and do film Stand Against Evil.
You film in Atlanta. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and film in Atlanta. And we approached like a couple production companies to do the special, and they said, well, we can't do anything until the next quarter, which would have been I would have been making it around now. And I just like, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
And then my agent, who's my stand-up agent, who's a really talented guy, a great guy named Silvio Lund, said, well, I know these, I'm connected with this record label, and let me hook you guys up, and we'll just do it as a record. And it was the best thing ever.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love working with them. I think they're fantastic. It's a punk label. I feel comfortable there. I kind of feel like, yeah, this is my spot. And
Gotta find your home.
And I don't care about it not being a special. People don't watch specials more than once or twice, but you'll listen to an album a lot. You know?
Right.
Like
That's true.
Like, I'm a giant George Carlin fan. I think his last special was one of his best. He's 72 years old, and we know now he's dying. Like you can see him slowing down. You can see him slowing down. But the material on that album is among the best of his career. And I have the special and I have the album. I never watch the special again. I listen to the album every couple of months. And because of Sound Exchange, you can actually monetize your album.
Right. Yeah. That's
Whereas
true.
you can't really monetize your special.
Well, I was thinking about it because I have listened to it, and like you have like the JFK chimpanzee bit, and I'm like, I know there's a visual here that I'm missing.
There's a visual there. There's a visual.
You used to have a JFK Jim Morrison bit, too, didn't you?
Yeah. I swap it out.
That's just swap it
out.
Because I remember that. I remember, was it Dennis Miller show?
Yes.
That you did?
That's on YouTube. That's actually, if you put my name into YouTube, that's one of the first clips that come up.
Is the
Dennis Miller
you
show.
doing the
and here's the cool
awesome.
thing about that. Dennis Miller had a late night talk show in the early 1990s.
Oh yeah. Stuart Copeland, right? Yeah.
Yes.
He's the lead band leader.
Right. And I was on it because I knew Dennis, and Dennis's head writer, a guy named Kevin Rooney, was a really good friend of mine. Still is. They both are. So I did the show, and the next night, the Pixies played, and they were pimping Trompe Le Monde. And I was a fan of the, so I said, can I come back tomorrow night and watch the Pixies? Yeah. So if you watch the Pixies playing Trompe Le Monde in the Dennis Miller show, I'm right behind the curtain, like 15 feet away from them, watching them play Planet of Sound.
Oh,
and it was the
great song.
I was like,
Great song.
And I was just like, I was right there. I was like, this is so great.
Boston too, right?
Yeah,
Did you go
but
see
I
them
used
when
to
you
see
were-
I used to see them at the Paradise for $1.
When you were in San Francisco, you never saw Metallica or anything like that.
No.
Did you go out to see music? Because I found when I started doing stand-up,
No,
I couldn't
'cause
go
I
out.
was
It's
always-
nighttime. You can't go out.
Well,
to
I'm
the
always
shows.
working.
Yeah.
And if I have a night off, I tend not to. Like, my friend, do you know April Richardson?
I know the name.
Yeah, she's a really, really funny comedian and a good friend of mine. And she goes out to live music like every night. She's seeing bands. She just loves it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm tired.
Yeah. My attention span was kind of destroyed by stand-up too. I'm like, oh, you're going to go for longer than 12 minutes? I don't know that I can do this.
No.
Is Philip Glass playing? I don't know. I can't really handle this.
God, Philip Glass. But yeah, I'm going to see. I just got tickets to see somebody, but it's. I'm going to see Morrissey at the Bowl on the 10th.
Yeah, you do a Morrissey too, don't you?
Yes. JFK and Morrissey. Why haven't I done that?
Why the combination of the two? Because Berliners are not vegan.
Yes.
Why you're sad?
We land on the moon because it's hard.
I am human and I need to be loved just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
There you go. It's all done.
More.
It's done. Wrap it up.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was. We all remember JFK's speech about the civil rights disrest in the South. There is panic on the streets of Birmingham.
The Birmingham. Nice.
Nice. See what I did there?
Yeah.
See how I did that in real
You're a
time? You
professional.
saw that in real time.
Yeah.
It's
Panic on the streets of London.
Hang the DJ.
So we have some fans who've asked some questions
That's really funny.
of you.
Oh, we got some listener mailbag to close it
We have
out.
Already.
listener mail because we gotta wrap this up. Unfortunately, because you have to go.
I have to be at my other job, which is a school bus.
Yes. Yeah, you're a kid delivery vehicle.
Just like James
Would you-
Hetfield's watching your daughters.
This morning, I was driving this morning. I had 2 kids and 3 dogs in a Prius.
Oh, Jesus. Wow. Where would you put the dogs?
They're
Where
all
would-
over.
Just in between the children?
They're all over me. They're everywhere. It's probably very illegal what we did.
Okay, first question. Would you consider getting into politics?
Nope.
Easy.
I rented
That
too
was
much
easy.
porn.
That's not a barrier
Does it
anymore,
matter?
There's
is
a
it?
groaning. Yeah, that's true. Like it's like all that is off when you look at what the president
Yeah.
now is. Yeah, what does
Right.
it matter?
That's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just don't think I can change. You know.
What did you like better, working on the Ben Stiller show or The Simpsons?
Well, I
One's
guess
shorter for sure.
the pencil show was shorter. I was younger.
Right.
Yeah.
But
That's where I got the Otto. Like, I love that character, by the
Otto?
way. The Cupid. Yeah.
yeah, I think probably The Simpsons, just because I was at a more. It was the Ben Stiller show was like. The Ben Stiller show was my college. Like I went to college, but I was just doing stand up all the time. I didn't really have a traditional college experience like people did, like the people around me did. I was in the middle of it, but I was going off every night doing stand up in places. I didn't give a shit about parties, and then I moved to San Francisco. Then I moved to L.A. and that was really my college experience. Like all of those people on the Ben Stiller show, Janine and David and Bob and Ben and Andy, they were all those are like my college friends. Like
Yeah.
those are the people I grew up with. And then when I did The Simpsons, it was like my time to adult. I was married. My wife and I bought a house and we had kids, and we get up in the morning and I drive my car to work, and I had a parking pass and an office, and that was a really nice, sedate time in my life that I look back on very, very fondly. But it also had to end.
Right.
Yeah.
And you got to work with George Meyer, who...
Yeah, George Meyer got me my job.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I wouldn't have been there
Man.
if it wasn't for George. Yeah, and
I've only heard legendary stories
they're all
about
true.
George Meyer.
I'll tell you the best George Meyer's. The story that shows you how brilliant George Meyer is. We were pitching on a bit where Homer fell off the top of a building and he hit a awning, and then went from like an awning to a flagpole to a thing, and then bounced into a dump truck, and we just didn't know. It's called a Rube Goldberg.
Yeah.
And we did not know how to end it. And it was late, and everybody was in the room. There's like 18 people in the room. Everybody looking at the ceiling, nobody knowing how to end it. And it was one of the great dead ends of my tenure at the show. And we're just staring and staring and staring. And we've already done popcorn, and we've done all the bits. And then George goes, and I'm talking like 40 minutes of a lot of very skilled people staring at the ceiling. And George goes, what if he lands in a dump truck that's full of marshmallow fluff and he's safe, and then after a beat, a bunch of scorpions come up out of the fluff and start stinging him. and there was like,
Did you guys go with that?
I was like, I think the bit ended up getting cut, but it was like nobody in the room said, "Oh, you thought of that first." Like nobody. Like, everybody was like, "Well, there you go."
That is awesome.
And my other favorite
Well,
just a very quick.
Go
My
ahead.
other favorite George Meyer memory is, when you're writing comedy, you get very heated and you get emotional about stuff, and you have these very serious arguments about these utterly ridiculous things. And I remember once George said, in a fit of pique, and he was deadly serious, "Look, nobody wants cargo pants in this punchline more than me."
The stuff that comes out of the business of comedy is always can be very, very funny.
it is.
When you're pitching shit, and it's like, I can't believe we just had this argument about this gay elf and what kind of hat he would wear.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it.
That is the beauty. Dana, thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Oh my God, thank you.
We really appreciate it. This has been awesome. You can hear Mr. Funny Man on Kill Rock Stars. You can see Stand Against Evil November 1st, I believe the second season premieres.
Yeah, and the first season is on Hulu now, and the second season premieres November 1st on IFC.
And you're at the San Francisco Punchline in December. I believe December 14th.
Yep.
So you go see him. I'll be there. I'll check that
Yeah.
out. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thanks a lot, Dana.
Thanks, my pleasure.
Thanks for listening.
You can find more episodes of SupDoc, show notes, updates, and more at supdocpodcast.com.
We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at SupDoc Podcast.
If you have comments, corrections, or want to suggest a documentary, email us at supdocpodcast@gmail.com.
The show is listener supported. You can donate to the show at patreon.com/SupDocPodcast.
If you can't donate financially, please subscribe, comment, or tell a friend about SupDoc.
We'd like to thank Documentary News for their ongoing support.
SupDoc is produced by Will Stovall.
Our theme music is by David Siegel.